The opportunity in these devices exists to go and try and do truly wacky things. And truly wacky things, I think that's actually unfair, but it's a tool. It's a tool just like a violin is a tool, or, you know, if you want to get more basic, I think the thing that most kids at one point or the other get to play with is like a Fender Stratocaster. Everybody's got one. Everybody knows somebody who's got one. And here's the amazing thing about the Fender Strat. It's just plank of wood with some strings attached to it. But it's such a great design that Stevie Ray Vaughan will sound completely different from Jeff Beck, will sound completely different from Eric Clapton, and it amplifies it somehow amplifies the DNA of the human being, the musicality of the human being. And that's what you want the stuff to do. You don't want it to be in the way. You want it to become expressive. And you just need to break through the myth of the elitism that unless it's a Steinway, you can't play music on it. You know, I'm saying if it's a laptop, you can make music on it. And for instance, I'm surrounded by synthesizers, but if it really comes down to it, I use very few, and I just try to get really, really, really good at them. Because the wealth of possibilities is there if you learn how to use it. And it's not like, you know, if you approach it as a musician, then learning is a very, the word learning isn't so difficult because musicians play. So if you're playful about the thing, it actually becomes fun to experiment, and it takes you on journeys and it takes you places you never thought you would get to. And once you know it pretty well, you can direct where the journey goes. And I think that's important. You know, don't let the machine control you. You have to be able to control the machine. So all these computer programs, it doesn't matter if it's Cubase or Logic or Pro Tools or Ableton Live or, you know, the best one is the one you know. It's you know, there's no favoritism. You know, I work on Cubase because I've always worked on Cubase, and the other advantage I have that everybody has is talk to the guys who built this thing. Talk to them, you know, and tell them, you know, how your workflow is, and sometimes or very often you get them to change it, or you get them to improve it. I remember sitting there with the Cubase guys years ago and coming up with this very elitist statement, which was something like, well, you should talk to me, I'm a professional composer. And they just went, bullshit. You professional composers, you just have this paradigm of how you work. You always think the same way. You know, the interesting ideas come from some kid in a garage in the Bronx who doesn't play keyboards, and he's going to come up with, you know, he doesn't think in the fixed metaphor of, you know, the keyboard in the classical way. He's going to come up with a tool and an invention that is revolutionary. And, you know, I had to sort of agree with that, because most of the advances that I've seen happen in musical technology is from people who love music but aren't musicians themselves. And they think just slightly differently, and they make you think in a slightly different way. I never use presets on synth. I always start off, I have an idea for a sound in my head, and I start with a clean blank patch, because as soon as I hear a preset, as soon as I hear a different sound from a preset, it sort of blunts the memory of the sound I'm trying to have in my head. You know, it's a distraction. It's like when you're trying to write a tune and somebody walks by whistling. You know, your tune's gone. And so for me, it just becomes second nature. I hear something in my head, and I sort of know how to build it. You know, it might be a bit of a struggle, but part of it is just to remember what that thing is in your head, and you can just train yourself to memorize the thing and figure out how to get there. Let me see if I can. There's a thing I've been playing around with. Now I have to just find these guys. I love the idea of that you hear the, you know, just before you get slapped, that where you hear the wind. So just adding a little bit of that sort of intent of something scary could be, something not quite healthy could be happening to you. Let me see if I can. That's the opening to Interstellar, which is, I just wanted wind, you know. You know, it's very descriptive. Let me see what this is. I wanted big waves, you know. So I made them, you know. But then, of course, you can do things. Hang on. Oh yeah, that was the. Because I was using so many organs in the score, and there's certain things real organs can't do. I just had to, you know. Let's see, this one. They can't really come from nothing because it's either on or off. You know, so. And what's this one? The problem is because I don't use presets, they're just used for that one project, and then I forget what they're named, and I forget, you know, I never use them again. The great thing about synthesizers is you can have a completely fresh palette for every project you work on. And for me, in a funny way, you know, sometimes I just sit there making sounds, and it's a sort of a sideways way of thinking about what the tunes are going to be, as opposed to sitting there and confronting the beast head on. You know, it's quite, you know, it's sort of weirdly little meditation going on. Oh, I'm just going to go and make a little wind, you know, and out of that wind, a tune is going to come. Okay, so I start with, you know, this is where I usually start. It's like my stupid Hansa starter patch, which has nothing in it other than, you know, the sound of a weaselly, horrible oscillator. You know, and I don't know. Let's go and make a bass sound. So, well, what do I need? I need to get rid of the weaselly, horrible quality at the top, right? So you shove a filter onto it. You know, stop this from sounding so boring. Let's put a bit of life into it. It needs to have a bit of a shape. You know, things need to move in time, right? So you can go and say this is a plucky sound, or it's a not a plucky sound, you know. So hang on, we're sort of already getting somewhere. I want it to last a bit longer at the end. I think it'd be nice if it could do a bit more than that. Let's say we wanted to go and do this sort of thing, just because it's easy. So now it's playing by itself. Of course, it'd be much more fun if it did something. I'm not saying this is particularly good, but you know, it's like instant something, you know. I mean, this is like 2 seconds or whatever. How long did it take? You know, it's not supposed to be anything great, you know, but it's just and 1, 2, 3, 4 modules, and you got something. You got at least something to start with. I usually play with one hand because let me just find a long sound. Because part of what real instruments do, you know, they have a lot of expression. I mean, you know, the whole point of you know, that's all you get in Batman, right? So it's all about 2 notes, but the amount of expressiveness you can put into them. So there's a lot that can happen within a note, just from them playing very, very quietly to you know, something fairly opinionated. It's figuring out how much expression you can get within the note, where things start to become interesting and musical. So, just a single note, right? And what can happen is that the note starts getting more and more unstable. guess I wanted to blow up. One of the things which is confusing right now is I'm so used to working at like a set volume in this room. I never change the volume, which is, you know, the cinema 85 dB. So you know that when you're writing or when you're making sounds, it's the appropriate volume for the picture. You know, it's like if you give yourself those restrictions that you're not going to move the volume and that you're just going to write at the volume of the movie, it's one less thing that can go wrong later on. And now, because of our conversation, I am down considerably in volume. So let's just stay on one note. I know that this guy makes things wobble up and down a bit. This guy's reverb, this guy will introduce a bit of instability. So it all gets a bit, this sound is just about things being unstable. And then this was just the idea of giving it a sort of I mean, they're just abstract sounds. So, I mean, you can specify each, you know, which I sort of did in this case. You specify each fader for what it can do. I mean, you build an instrument, you build an abstract instrument. It's a bunch of LFOs in here, being very, you know, with controlled randomness, and it's a bunch of, if you look in here, down there are all these little, you know, wobbly things that are, you know, just randomness, but, you know, made randomness. I mean, like this guy here, he's that clock that, does that make sense? And then the big, hang on, where's the big swoop? Okay, so then you can see that if I, so this is the shape of the filter opening, and it's just in a cycle, you know. While this guy, he's just a subtle, you know, it's just a subtle berry in timbre going on. And this just speeds the whole thing up or slows it down. I just wanted things to be unstable in time and in pitch as well. But the idea that you just have one simple sound and it can become more unstable as it goes. And where's this other thing? So it's just little things. The big dive is a good one. So these are all sort of a family at the moment. So I can have more reverb or less reverb. I can make it more and more unstable. It doesn't help that you people have stolen my sustain pedal. Now we're scaring the children. So, within one sound, you can create all these different textures and these different worlds, and you can, rather than playing a keyboard, it's fun to go and just wiggle faders around. It's just a different, it's more the way a string player would move the bow across the string. So you don't have to limit yourself to just being a rotten piano player.